I will never forget how my own mother shamed my daughter on Christmas to teach her a lesson in modesty. I taught her a lesson in return that she will never forget. To be honest, until that Christmas, I probably didn't realize just how much my mother, Patricia, loved to control everyone, especially through money and what she called moral lessons. I thought we just had personality clashes, but I was wrong. She was always the type of person who believed that if they achieved something in life, and she achieved a lot, no doubt, they had the absolute right to judge and educate everyone around them, especially her children and grandchildren. This year became the year I finally decided to draw a line. My daughter, Emily, turned 13 this year. She wasn't a spoiled kid, not at all. She loves photography, enjoys reading, and gets good grades. But like many teenagers, she dreamed of a new phone. Not the latest model, but one that wouldn't freeze every 5 minutes and could take decent pictures. Her old iPhone 7, which I bought her used 3 years ago, was barely holding on. Sarah, my wife, and I had an agreement. Emily would study hard and earn some money by helping neighbors walk their dogs and water their plants, and I would pitch in the rest so by Christmas, she would have enough money to buy a decent, not too expensive but good new phone. Emily approached this task very seriously. For an entire month, starting in early December, she woke up earlier to walk the neighbor's dog before school. And after school, she hurried to the house across the street. She kept a separate notebook where she recorded every dollar she earned. She was so focused on this goal that, honestly, I was proud of her. She stopped asking for pocket money for trivial things. Her mind was completely on the phone. My wife, Sarah, was initially against it, saying I should just buy her the phone. It was Christmas, after all. But I explained to her that it wasn't about the money. It was about Emily realizing the value of that purchase, understanding what a goal is and how to achieve it. Sarah agreed when she saw how eagerly Emily was saving. Patricia, my mother, was, of course, aware. I spoke to her on the phone and told her about our project. Immediately, I heard her signature, condescending tone. "Oh, David, you and Sarah spoil her too much. Children don't need such expensive toys. It's all vanity. I didn't even dream of such things at her age. She needs a lesson in modesty." I dismissed it then, saying it was our business, and Emily knew the value of hard work. But I forgot that when Patricia says someone needs a lesson, it means she has already devised her own plan to deliver it. All through December, Emily told everyone who would listen about how she would soon buy her phone. She constantly checked prices online and read reviews. By the middle of the month, she had saved about $400, which was a huge sum for a 13-year-old girl. I promised to add the rest so she could buy the model she had chosen. 3 days before Christmas, we gathered at my mother's house. It's a tradition. A big family dinner, decorations, a Christmas tree. Everyone was there, Patricia, my younger brother Michael with his wife and 2 kids, and us, Sarah, Emily, and me. At the table, Patricia started her usual conversation about how modern children are too spoiled and don't know the value of money. Everyone was silent. They were used to it. But then she turned to Emily. "Emily, dear, it's wonderful that you saved money, but you, like all of you, need to understand that true value isn't in things. It's in modesty," she said, looking directly at my daughter. Emily smiled, not understanding where this was going. The time came to open presents. Emily opened hers last, and then she got to the gift from her grandmother. It was a large, heavy box, very much like a box for an expensive new phone. Emily lit up. Her eyes sparkled, and she looked at Sarah and me with excitement. She thought her grandmother, knowing her efforts, had decided to surprise her and gave her the exact phone she had dreamed of. She nervously tore off the wrapping paper. The box was genuine, tightly sealed, like a brand new one. She opened the lid, and at that moment, everyone froze. Inside lay something that was clearly not a modern smartphone. It was a cheap, plastic toy phone with a sticker that read, "My first phone." Next to it was a card. Emily looked up, and I saw how the joy in her eyes was first replaced by confusion, and then by pure, childlike humiliation. A quiet, awkward laugh went through the room from Michael's kids, and Michael and his wife seemed to want to disappear into the floor. Patricia, meanwhile, sat with a triumphant smile. See, dear? This is to teach you to appreciate simple things. You don't need to chase expensive toys. Children are given too much, and they become spoiled. She announced loudly and moralistically, making sure everyone heard. She didn't even let Emily respond, simply turning away to grab her wine glass. Tears, big and bitter, welled up in Emily's eyes. She closed the box and silently, without a single word, walked into the next room. Sarah tried to get up to follow her, but I stopped her with a gesture. I felt everything inside me clench with anger. The anger was not just at my mother, but at myself for allowing her to do this. To humiliate a 13-year-old child who had tried so hard, all for her own cynical, foolish lesson. In that moment, I knew the game was over. I wasn't going to let her do this anymore. I stood up, adjusted my jacket, and looked at my mother, who was so absorbed in her triumph that she didn't even notice the expression on my face. I took a deep breath. My response had to be flawless, and I knew exactly what it would be. I let the silence hang in the air for a moment. It wasn't the silence of respect, but the uncomfortable, thick silence of people watching a slow-motion car crash involving family. Michael, my brother, finally cleared his throat, mumbling something about needing to check on his kids. But even he didn't move. Everyone was waiting for me. They were waiting for me to play the role of the dutiful son who would quietly smooth things over and apologize for my daughter's presumed sensitivity. But the moment Emily walked out of the room, tears streaming down her face because of a cheap piece of plastic and my mother's harsh words, something fundamental shifted inside me. This wasn't just a difference of opinion. This was public shaming disguised as parental guidance. This was cruelty. I looked at Patricia. She was sipping her Cabernet, gazing around the table with the smug satisfaction of a general who has just won a minor battle. Her face was calm, self-assured. She had done the right thing according to her own warped moral compass, and now she expected praise, or at least silence and compliance. "Patty," I said, using the nickname I hadn't used since I was a child and which always caught her off guard. My voice was low, flat, completely devoid of Christmas cheer. "Do you truly believe that was necessary?" She placed her wine glass down, slowly, deliberately. "David, don't be dramatic. It was a lesson. The child is spoiled. All that talk about saving money, yet she still expects a several $100 device for a holiday. You encourage greed." I leaned against the back of my chair, trying to keep my hands from shaking. "She saved $400, Mom. $400 in 1 month by working hard after school. What she expected was respect for her effort. What she got was humiliation from her own grandmother in front of the entire family." Sarah, who had been sitting rigid, finally spoke up, her voice tight with controlled fury. "It's Christmas, Patricia. It was mean, utterly mean-spirited." "Oh, Sarah," my mother sighed, waving a dismissive hand. "You were always the weak one, indulging everyone. That's why your children need these reality checks. They need to know that life isn't about expensive trinkets." That was the key. Life isn't about expensive trinkets. But for Patricia, life was about expensive trinkets, the ones she owned, the ones that validated her success, and the ones she deliberately withheld from others to exert power. I saw it clearly then. She wasn't trying to teach Emily modesty. She was trying to demonstrate her dominance over me, over Sarah, and especially over Emily's aspirations. She wanted to prove that even after all Emily's hard work, Patricia still held the ultimate power to decide her worth and her gifts. I decided not to argue further. Arguing with my mother never worked. It only fed her need for conflict. I needed action, not words. I needed a counter-lesson that would hit her where it hurt, her pride and her carefully constructed image of being the morally superior matriarch. "You know what, Mom?" I said, standing up fully. My voice was calm now, perhaps too calm. "You might be right. Maybe Emily does need a lesson about value. But perhaps it's not the lesson you think." I walked over to my coat, which was hanging by the door, and reached into the inside pocket. The box was there, heavy and cold. This was the actual phone Emily and I had picked out together just yesterday. I had told her I would contribute the remaining $350 and we were going to order it after the holidays. But I had secretly bought it in advance, planning to give it to her from both Sarah and me later that evening when we got home. A quiet, meaningful gift. Now, though, the quiet meaning was gone. It had to be a public declaration, a direct confrontation. I walked back to the dining table, holding the sealed, genuine box in my hand. It was the same brand, the exact model Emily had worked so hard for. I placed it gently on the table, right next to the cheap toy phone my mother had given her. The contrast was stark, the sleek, new packaging next to the childish plastic imitation. Everyone stared. Patricia's triumphant smile started to falter, replaced by a flicker of confusion and annoyance. I didn't look at her. I looked at Michael, at his wife, at the blank faces of my mother's guests. Emily didn't just spend the month working for nothing. I stated, addressing the room, not just Patricia. She worked harder than anyone else at this table for her goal. She earned $400 through sheer effort. I picked up the toy phone box. This, I said, dropping the cheap plastic box back onto the table with a clatter, is not a lesson in modesty. It's a cruel joke designed to humiliate a child who deserved to be celebrated. I then picked up the real phone box. And this, I said, turning towards the doorway where Emily had disappeared, is a reward for hard work from her parents. I paused for dramatic effect, making sure my mother was watching me. Her jaw was tight. She knew what was coming. "Excuse me," I said politely, giving a small, formal nod to the table, and walked out of the room to find my daughter. I heard Sarah get up to follow me, but I didn't stop. The real show was about to begin, and Patricia needed to see the first act play out. Alone, while the family watched her humiliation instead of Emily's, the tension was palpable. She was cornered, and she hadn't even realized it yet. The dining room had become a courtroom, and my mother, Patricia, was the accused. My question, who is it in this room that truly needs a lesson in generosity and kindness, had the impact of a physical blow. The silence was so profound I could hear the Christmas music faintly playing from the next room, a jarringly cheerful soundtrack to the meltdown happening right here. Patricia recovered quickly, though the redness in her neck betrayed her simmering fury. She was a master of deflection, honed over decades. "This is outrageous, David," she spat, her voice tight but attempting to regain that moral high ground. "You bring up a private financial matter concerning a third party to deliberately embarrass me at a family gathering. All because I tried to instill some sense into your overly indulged child." "It's relevant, Mom," I countered, my eyes not leaving hers. "It shows the difference between talking about values and living them. Emily showed value by working hard. You showed something else. You decided to publicly shame a child instead of congratulating her." She took a sharp breath, desperately trying to change the narrative. She decided to go for the full frontal defensive lie. A lie so audacious, she must have thought it would save her face. "You know what, David? Fine. You want to talk about money? Let's talk about the money you contributed to that phone," she said, practically shouting the last word. She pointed a finger at me. "He acts like a hero for pitching in the rest. But what he didn't tell you, Emily or anyone else, is that the money he used to buy that expensive toy, it was my money." My brother Michael shifted uncomfortably, and Sarah looked utterly confused. Patricia continued, riding the wave of her own invented drama. 2 weeks ago," she elaborated, her voice now high and self-righteous, "David called me, crying poverty, saying he couldn't cover the remaining cost of the phone without hurting his own finances this month. He begged me for a personal loan. A large, interest-free amount, mind you, which I reluctantly gave him from my emergency fund, reminding him he was being irresponsible. So, the generous contribution he made came from me. He's lecturing me about generosity using my own money." For a moment I was genuinely stunned. Not by the accusation, which was baseless, but by the sheer, desperate magnitude of her lie. I hadn't asked her for a penny. My finances were fine. It was a complete fabrication, designed to instantly flip the script. I go from being the protecting father to a hypocritical, lying son who begs his mother for money and then insults her. The ultimate betrayal in her mind. Emily, who was standing beside me, looked crushed again. She looked up at me, her eyes searching for the truth. This was the moral dilemma. My word against Patricia's, with Emily's faith hanging in the balance. I could see the confidence returning to my mother's eyes. She thought she had won. Her lie was bold enough to stick, especially since she framed it as a private financial matter that I was now exposed for. The rest of the family wouldn't question the powerful matriarch about her claims of giving a loan. I let her enjoy her victory for exactly 3 seconds. I didn't argue the loan. I didn't deny asking for money. I didn't even mention the fact that I had the receipt for the phone right here, paid for entirely by my checking account. Because the key wasn't to argue this lie, but to expose the foundational, much larger one that held her entire world together. I smiled. A slow, cold smile that didn't reach my eyes. "That's a fascinating story, Mom," I said, my voice smooth and dangerously polite. "But even if it were true, which it is absolutely not, I bought the phone with my own money, thank you. It raises a much more important point about where all this money you're so generous with actually came from." I took a deep breath. This was the point of no return. "Do you remember, Mom, about 20 years ago when Grandpa George passed away? You and Dad had just started your business and you were struggling. Grandpa left a small but significant life insurance policy. When the lawyer read the will, he explained that Grandpa had divided the policy into 3 equal parts. One for you, one for Michael, and one for me." My mother's face had lost all color. Her eyes were wide, fixed on mine, radiating pure fear. She knew where I was going. Michael, however, looked utterly bewildered. "What life insurance, David?" Michael whispered. Confusion etched onto his face. "Grandpa never mentioned that." "Exactly, Michael," I confirmed, never taking my eyes off Patricia. "Because Mom conveniently forgot to mention it to you, too." She convinced the lawyer, Henry, that she was the sole beneficiary, claiming Grandpa changed his mind right before he died, citing the fact that you and I were already financially secure, while she needed the capital to start her business. The total amount was $300,000. I paused, letting the number sink in. "Your initial cut, Michael, was $100,000. My cut was also $100,000. That money, Mom, was meant to be our inheritance, our head start. Instead, you took it all to fund the very business that allows you to sit here 20 years later and lecture your 13-year-old granddaughter on the importance of modesty and the dangers of greed, while accusing me of being a beggar." The dining room erupted into chaos. Michael immediately started asking questions, demanding to know if I was serious. Sarah gasped, finally understanding the depth of my mother's deceit. I didn't need a denial from Patricia. Her silence, the pure, agonizing shock on her face, was all the confirmation anyone needed. I had held this secret for years, a dark, quiet moral dilemma I had been wrestling with, and now, to defend my daughter and expose my mother's cruelty, I had weaponized the truth. The only question left was how she would react when her carefully constructed empire of lies came crashing down around her. The climax was about to hit. The noise level in the room spiked instantly, then dropped into a horrified, focused hush. My brother, Michael, was on his feet, his face pale with shock and rage. $100,000. 20 years ago, that kind of money would have changed his life completely. "Is that true, Mom?" Michael's voice was raw, shaking with betrayal. "Did you take Dad's insurance money? All of it? And tell us he left nothing?" Patricia didn't answer Michael. She was only looking at me, her eyes burning with a desperate, animalistic rage. The mask of the self-righteous matriarch had completely shattered, revealing the scared, grasping woman beneath. She had spent 2 decades building her success on that secret, and I had just detonated it in front of the entire family. "You venomous boy," she whispered, her voice laced with poison. "You saved that. You saved that lie to destroy me. You have always been jealous." "It's not a lie, Mom. It's the truth," I said, my voice finally dropping all pretense of calmness. "I have copies of the documents. I knew this for years. I didn't use it because I didn't want to destroy the family. But when you decided to use your success, built on that theft, to humiliate my daughter for working hard, I realized the family you built was already rotten. You talk about greed? You stole my inheritance and Michael's to fund your luxury. You are the embodiment of everything you preach against. I looked down at Emily, who was clutching her new phone box but looking up at her grandmother with an expression of profound sadness, not triumph. Patricia finally turned to Michael, her composure entirely gone. It was necessary. We were struggling. You and David would have just wasted it. I invested it. I turned it into something substantial. It benefited everyone. It allowed me to host gatherings like this. You didn't ask? Michael stated simply, the weight of the missing decades. The struggle to start his own life, the missed opportunities. Heavy in his voice. You stole what was ours and then you lectured us on money management. I stepped forward and placed my hand firmly on the table, silencing the room once more. This was the final, devastating act. Michael and I didn't bring this up tonight for revenge, Mom, I said, looking straight at her. We brought it up because you wanted to teach Emily a lesson about money. So here is the real lesson, the one you need to hear. Money doesn't buy character, and wealth doesn't excuse cruelty. You can buy all the expensive things in the world, but you can't buy back the respect you lost tonight. I looked over at Emily. Emily, you bought your phone with $400 you earned honestly. That phone is worth more than every single expensive thing your grandmother owns, because it was paid for with integrity, not deceit. I turned back to Patricia, who was breathing heavily, tears of frustrated fury finally starting to stream down her face. She looked old, defeated, and profoundly alone, surrounded by her expensive Christmas decorations and her ruined family. This lesson is not for Emily. It's for you, I concluded. And you will remember it every time you look at that house, bought with our money, and every time you look at the daughter you tried to shame. I picked up the toy phone box and placed it gently in front of her. Keep your lesson in modesty, Mom. We are leaving. Sarah, who had been standing silent but resolute, walked over, kissed Michael on the cheek, and put her arm around Emily. Come on, Sarah said softly. Let's go home. We walked out, leaving the stunned silence, the scattered wrapping paper, and the expensive food behind. Michael and his family stayed, and I knew the discussion they were about to have would be long and brutal. As we drove away, Emily, sitting in the back seat with her new phone, finally spoke. Dad, will we ever see Grandma again? I glanced at her in the rearview mirror. I thought about the depth of the betrayal, the years of quiet resentment, and the cruelty she had shown tonight. I thought about the $100,000 I never received, and the fact that I didn't even care about the money anymore. The issue was the character. I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe, but things will never be the same. Sometimes the most expensive thing you lose isn't money. It's the illusion of a kind family. We drove on through the quiet Christmas night. The phone was just a phone, the money was just money, but the rift was permanent. The only thing I was certain of was that my daughter would grow up knowing the difference between generosity and grandstanding, between real hard work and manipulative power games. And for me, that was a lesson worth losing Christmas over.